Hi folks, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. The AI Doomas are everywhere and they want to start blowing up stuff, and I want to talk about it. Let's look at a couple of recent clips.
Please be aware, Russia, that if you do this, we will launch a conventional strike on your data center. If we cannot convince you to shut it down, if it is up and running and we do not know what is running on there, or we know that dangerous stuff is running on there. We are not doing this in the expectation that you will back down. We are not doing this in the expectation that you will not go to war. We are not being macho and being like, this is us threatening you because we expect you to back down. We will launch a conventional strike on this data center in terror of our own lives and the lives of our children, exceeding the terror that we have even of a nuclear retaliation by you. This is not a macho thing. This is us being genuinely scared. Please work with us on not wiping out the human race here. And if they're like, well, no, we're tough, then you launch a conventional strike on the data center. And, what comes. And
to be explicit about that, you think a nuclear war is preferable to the path that we're currently on?
If Russia drops a nuclear weapon on a U.S. city in response to it's not clear to me that this is how things play out. But, if you conventionally strike a Russian data center and Russia decides that they want to drop a tactical nuke on a U.S. military base somewhere in retaliation, and your policy then calls for dropping a tactical nuke in Russia, and you've got this whole slow motion exchange, there would be survivors. There would not be survivors from an actual superintelligence.
This is the point at which the podcast host should have gone, whoa, slow down, that's kind of crazy. You are willing to actually doom humanity for real before it's theoretically doomed at some point in the future by AGI. I know you're constructing some very sophisticated arguments that you're totally convinced of, but I'll withhold my unabashed support for just a little bit. Now, there's obviously been a lot of rigorous debate about the merits of this AI Duma argument, but I want to highlight some considerations that have not even entered into the debate, a little bit to my surprise.
There would not be survivors from an actual superintelligence.
But a bit of background first. The moral philosophical underpinnings from which this line of thought comes makes this stance consistent within that worldview. Look at this extract from the Bostrom Superintelligence book, which is the Bible of the AI Duma movement. This forms the basis of the philosophy of long-termism. Who could even argue with a name like that? Let's recap. The total endowment, the thing that we have the highest moral duty to protect, is the total number of potential human minds, both real in the flesh and virtual, that could live on a substantial fraction of the habitable planets and even structures in space that are not planets, up to the space reachable by light from Earth, up to the time of the heat death of the universe. And they estimate that to be 10 to the power of 58 minds. The AI Duma camp was birthed out of the philosophy of long-termism. Bostrom was one of the founding philosophers. Yes, the same Bostrom who wrote Superintelligence. Many others have crafted excellent critiques of that philosophy, so go read those. I'll link some of those below. But the gist of it is that it is being used to justify some pretty horrendous suffering wrought upon the real human beings that are alive today, in order to make sure that the 10 to the power of 58 humans in our potential future have a chance at existing. What's 10 to the power of 9 sacrifices when compared to saving 10 to the power of 58? It's insignificant. And that is the reason why the Bostrom Yudkowsky camp are so comfortable proposing inflicting massive suffering today to reduce the probability of existential wipeout by even a tiny bit. It's guilt laundering from the present into a future so vast that it is absolved by dilution.
And we do not know what is running on there. We know that dangerous stuff is running on there.
If the human species woke up one day and decided it would rather live, it would not be easy at this point to bring the GPU clusters and the GPU manufacturing processes under sufficient control that nobody built things that were too much smarter than GPT-4 or GPT-5 or whatever the level just barely short of lethal is, which we would not, if we were taking this seriously, get as close to as we possibly could, because we don't actually know exactly where the level is. But we would have to do, more or less, is have international agreements that were being enforced even against parties not party, even against countries not party to that international agreement, if it became necessary. You would be wanting to track all the GPUs. You might be demanding that all the GPUs call home on a regular basis or stop working. You'd want to tamper-proof them.
Okay, let's even step over the it's better to provoke nuclear war than get to AGI argument. Let's look at the kind of moratorium they are calling for and the enforcement that requires. Think about what kind of precedent this would set. Forget for a minute the specific field of AI that the AI doomers are talking about. What they're actually arguing for is a global government enforcement mechanism that would subject both private corporations and citizens to an all-seeing police state. Because that's what it would take to peek into every data center everywhere. That's what it would take to ensure that GPU manufacturers build tamper-proof GPUs that call home and report malicious training loads for some definition of malicious that the doomer cabal deems acceptable. And of course, it won't take only monitoring GPUs, because one could train AGI on CPUs. So we're already at a place where we need to police all computation, whether it happens on GPUs or CPUs. No more encryption. Every computational load anywhere will be subject to random or even ongoing surveillance to ensure that the humanity-destroying AGI isn't being trained on it. Keep going down the compute chain. True enforcement would require monitoring and watchdogs at every semiconductor fab. And to prevent the possibility of someone maybe spinning up their own little fab hidden from the government panopticon, you would give this police state even deeper powers to monitor every aspect of life, industry, and consumption. After all, you'd want to detect large draws of electricity in case it was being used to train an AGI. And this Politburo, once established, will, of course, want to save humanity from other new technologies that pose existential risks. So we've gone and created a body outside democratic and judicial guardrails that has the power to squint real hard and declare some class of human endeavor dangerous enough to pose an existential risk, and then put a stop to it. That is the path the AI doomers want to send us down. And this question of individual liberties and preserving free societies never comes up. Not once in the superintelligence book, and not once in the blitzkrieg of podcast appearances that Yudkowsky has been on recently. None of the hosts thought to ask about it either, and I thought that was a large enough omission to make this rant video.
Launch a conventional strike on this data center.
History is not devoid of humanity successfully dealing with what were at the time thought to be existential risks. Example number one is nuclear power. We made atomic bombs, and then the entire world got together to make sure that we didn't wipe ourselves out while preserving the ability to go to war with each other. So, yay, score for humanity. Another example is the Asilomar Conference, which back in 1975 got together the prominent biotechnologists of the day to discuss how to safely perform research that involved recombinant DNA. They were worried that splicing DNA around would create a killer virus or cancer cells that would spread out into the world. They came up with restraints on themselves and principles for how to carry out research while moving the field forward. And all this without dragging government and regulators into it.
All the greatest of legacies of Asilomar is clearly the scientific progress over the last 40 years. We did put guidelines in place. We gained the confidence of the public that scientists were trying to move forward with adequate attention to risk and for their benefit. It has created an ambiance in the life science community of paying attention to this public trust, risk versus benefit, how to bring people together in moving scientific progress into new realms.
So that shows that scientists can self-organize to deal with risks. They can self-regulate. They can find ways to push the boundary of knowledge further without shutting down the whole endeavor, and certainly without advocating for airstriking labs.
Russia drops a nuclear weapon on a U.S. city.
The AI doomers have all the attention right now. Perhaps because we're all worried that AI will take our jobs and strip us of our humanity. That voice saying, AI will kill us all, shut it down now, sounds pretty appealing. But I think it deserves a bit more examination and a bit more pushback.